One.
And welcome to another episode of the Tigers Minor League Report Player Interview Series. Today we are pleased to be joined by Toledo Mudhen, Sawyer Gipson-Long, not Erie Seawolf anymore, which I made the mistake of before the show. But Sawyer, thanks so much for joining us. And we appreciate. Yeah, Raj, I was like, so is the drive from Akron? And he's like, I'm in Louisville. I'm like, oh, that's right. We saw you in Toledo. But Sawyer, like I said, Sawyer, thanks so much for joining us. And we hope you're having a good time. And one of the things we always like to kick off our interviews by asking our guests their earliest baseball memory. So if there's something that sticks out in your mind, we'd love to hear it.
Green Monster or something. And I would go there, dream to hit a ball over that because everybody knows like Fenway on that little field. We're all 10 years old and nobody could hit it over it. So tall and big. And there's this one kid that was like already like 6 feet tall at 10 years old, 200 pounds. He was just putting them over the fence. I remember watching him play. And I was like one of the baseball is like watching this 10-year-old put a ball over the fence on this backfield, and like it was always my dream to hit one over. And I was never like that big at that time, but eventually I got bigger. But as it was fun to try and hit the ball and try and get it over that fence back in the day.
That's I remember having a feeling like that. We played a ton of wiffle ball back in my backyard, and I watched my brother 6 years older than me, and I watched him and his friends just hitting dingers all day long on our roof. And I had to get one of those giant like Captain Caveman plastic bats. And I remember when I got my first home run, and it was like the coolest moment of my life. So I think that's not uncommon. Also, just the idea that there's always that one kid who he's already got a mustache. He's probably smoking behind the garage.
Yeah, exactly. Just like outgrew everybody too quick, and he's just like a beast. And like, gosh, I wish I was like that.
Now, like I said, we want to get kind of deep into the pitching stuff here, but I did want to mention one of the things when I was reading about reading your bio over at Mercer, it said that you were a 4-year swimmer in high school.
Yes.
And I just was kind of curious, was that just kind of something you could do in the off season to stay in shape? Was it something you really dug? Is it something you still like to do? Or did it help you at all with pitching or cardio or anything like that?
Yeah, it was actually my first sport I started. I was really young when I was getting in the pool, like 5 or 6. I didn't start baseball until I was like 8 or so. And having that as kind of like my off-season sport growing up, it was, I think, beneficial to me with cardio, and then I guess with arm health, and going through high school with it, just having another sport to, take my mind off of baseball and still stay in shape for baseball season. When that came around, it was a blessing for me to be good at it and to like be relatively competitive at it also.
Yeah, that's just it's a somewhat unique one. I remember there used to be a kid in the system named Ulrich Boyarsky who was a swimmer too, but usually you find guys who also played basketball or football or something like that. So it's a different it's a different muscle group, really. I mean, it feels like you're working everything when you're swimming.
Definitely. I don't meet very many swimmer baseball player hybrids, but I remember swimming against Tyler Stevenson in high school, and he's a Cincinnati Reds catcher, and I think he's the only guy I know that was another one, and he's doing pretty good.
One of the questions we wanted to ask you was we noticed that you developed a cutter, and your strikeout numbers have gone up exponentially. How did that come about in such a quick period of time? Because I think you're out just one start, and all of a sudden you adapted to it so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I was in Erie, it was, I believe, in May when I started working on the cutter. Before spring training, I added my sinker back into my repertoire. I threw that in college, and the numbers on it were really good, and the Tigers really liked it. So I think adding that back in gave them a little bit of confidence to push me in my development of adding another pitch, and they thought the cutter was the pitch to go with. So basically, I pitched on like a Tuesday, and I was supposed to pitch on Sunday for the 5-day, and then our coordinator, Gabe Rebus, called me and said, "We're going to skip your start. We want you to throw a couple bullpens and learn a cutter." I was like, "All right, let's do it." And I pretty much bought in. I didn't have any real hesitation. I was like, it's only going to help me, even if I can't figure it out. Like, being able to attempt to throw this pitch is still, you know, going to help me in the future just for experimental purposes or trying to figure out what I can and can't throw. And eventually I found a grip that worked for me after, tinkering a little bit and experimenting and throwing it in bullpens. And, throwing it the first time in a game, it was exciting just to see what would happen. And I've stuck with it, and it's still developing for me. Like all my other pitches I've thrown my whole life, and I have a huge sample size with those. But the cutter I've just started throwing for a few months now, so I'm still working on it, still experimenting with it. But right now, it's been really good for me to neutralize lefties.
Yeah, so we have a kind of a unique experience there where we had done a top 25 prospect list in the system, and we didn't have you in our top 25. And someone, possibly a relative of yours, asked, "Where's Sawyer Gipson-Long?" We're like, "Well, he's like in our next 5, but we're kind of worried about how he's performing against lefties because it was like left-handed hitters, right? Like the numbers were just much better than right-handers." And from our perspective, your changeup is really good, and it seems to work well too. So I like. What was it? Were lefties hitting your fastball? Did they just get a really good look at it, and so that was like you needed to add something a little bit harder to offset the lefties?
Yeah. So last year I only had 3 pitches, and it was just the 4-seam fastball, the slider, and the changeup. And I actually also worked on my changeup this year a little bit. I tweaked the grip, and it's moving a little better. Also, the numbers on it are a little better movement wise, and um, having only one fastball and one that wasn't necessarily a great pitch metrically gave lefties a better chance against me, and they were able to see it a lot better, and it played well into their swing path. So one, adding the sinker helped just to offset how my 4-seam played relative to it. Like even though my 4-seam doesn't have crazy carry, it has enough relative to my sinker and my cutter to play up in the zone. So, adding those pitches, having something that goes hard into a lefty, just like my sinker goes hard into a righty, helped me increase my 4-seam fastball success, so I could go to it later in a count, like a 2-strike count, and get it up in the zone, and they would swing and miss at it or like take it up there. They wouldn't be able to see it as well.
Yeah, so that's fascinating, and it's kind of one of the things that it just is interesting about baseball. Sometimes it's really putting the whole puzzle together, right? Rather than you have 3 pitches, which is supposed to be enough, but if you have more, then they all start working off each other better. And that's we knew you had added the cutter, but your first few starts up in Toledo, we can get the Hawkeye data from Baseball Savant, and it just kept saying a 4-seamer, slider, changeup. I'm like, where's it coming? And then the last start, it was like 7 pitches. They had you with a curveball, they had you with a slider, they had you with a cutter, they had a 4-seamer, sinker, changeup. I'm like, how many pitches does he throw? Do you really throw a curveball? I assume that's just kind of a tracking error.
Yeah, no, it's my slider. Yeah, probably just weird.
But that's certainly an impressive arsenal now. And as we said, we got there, and it was 2 strikeouts an inning the entire game. And the only hit was such a bummer, right? Like that. It was like a high fly ball, but it was just in the right spot.
Fly ball, beat the shift, just an awkward spot down the line. I was a little bummed, but that happens. That's how the baseball gods work, I guess.
I don't know if you keep track of these things, but would you consider that one of the best starts of your career?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely the most strikeouts. No runs. I mean, definitely in pro ball, and especially like doing it at the AAA level. I think I'm very proud of myself for the work I put in, and then very blessed to go out there and do that, and I'm very thankful.
And speaking of levels too, so how has the adjustment been to AAA comparatively speaking in terms of batters' aggressiveness or approach at the plate?
Yeah, a lot of the guys have big league experience and also a lot more experience in baseball. You know, the guys are older on average and they've seen more pitches and understand the zone so much better. So the difference, I think, is like they know the zone so well. Those pitches that you throw outside the zone just a little bit, they're more likely going to take. Like you have to be able to compete in the zone in every count, whether it's 2 strikes or you're down 3-0. Like you got to throw your nastiest stuff in the zone. And also, you know, you can't throw it down the middle either. Like you have to command better to both sides of the plate, up and down. And if you're just throwing, you know, your pitches in one spot, they're going to adjust no matter how nasty or how hard the pitch is.
Yeah, and you know, we've seen an awful lot of players come up from Erie this year. They're half of them are on the team now. It seems like so. Normally, like a AAA locker room, kind of this time of year, it might be kind of a bummer, but it feels like there's a lot of young guys who are going to be big leaguers there. So I feel like it must be kind of fun right now to see all those guys with you.
Yeah, it is fun. There's a lot of energy in the clubhouse. A lot of guys that, you know, haven't made it up yet that want to really bad, and it's fun to play with those guys because they always, you know, bring their A game. They want to play hard.
And so one of the things, and we've been talking about, you've got this starters arsenal. You've got all these pitches you can use. They're all getting better, and you're using them well. But there's only so many rotation spots in a big league club. And one of the things we were just curious about is like, okay, well, what if you had to go to the bullpen?
Mhm.
Have you ever really just tried to go all out for like an inning to see how hard you could throw and see what might happen in that circumstance?
Yeah, I did last year, and I think I sat like 94 to 96. So, I mean, mid 90s, I think would be reasonable for me at this moment if I was just to come right out of the pen. But I think that's plenty enough velo if I was out of the pen with 4 other pitches to go along with it.
Yeah, that's something we've seen this year in the Tigers with Tyler Holton, right? I think he came up as a starter, and he's not even he's throwing 91, 93, I think, but it's a lefty, and he's got like the 6 pitches, and he's just baffling guys. So yeah, there's a path forward for, I think, for him and for you. But yeah, we were just kind of curious because you got that slider. As we talked about the changeups developing, the cutters developing. Throwing mid 90s, that might be a fun look too. But obviously, I think most pitchers probably want to start if they can. Is that how you feel?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to start. I feel really good starting, and I have a good routine for it. So it would be a transition for me to come out of the pen. I've only done it a few times in my career, but if that's what the Tigers want me to do to help them win, then I'm willing to figure it out and do it for them.
I'm trying to think what else. We think we hit on a lot of the pitching stuff specifically. I'm checking. We had some questions written down here. We discussed your adjustments. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious, I guess, overall, how you're feeling about the progress you've made all year. Really, I mean, stuff from the beginning of the year to now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've made some real, big time progress?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, I think, and I've developed pretty much 3 new pitches, like the sinker I brought back, the cutter, and then the changeup I was tweaking, and it's turned into an awesome pitch for me. So having those 3 extra pitches, it just makes hitters uncomfortable. You don't know what's coming. You got to deal with 5 pitches like in your head. I would say that's pretty hard to wrap your mind around.
And I was going to say, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is that you seem more efficient in your outings, where the strike throwing is early on, the counts are getting ahead, and the ability, especially on lefties, the biggest thing I've taken away is it seems like your changeup's been kind of a good put away pitch for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been a pretty, good strike thrower, and strike one is super important. Getting to 2 strikes as quick as you can is super important, and then having the stuff as well to go along with that is like it's amazing just to have that and have the confidence to throw that, and it's helped a lot for sure.
Yeah, and just the one other thing, you seem to throw from a slightly lower slot to me,
Hmm.
or maybe it's just more extension. I don't know. I'm sure you know all the ins and outs of all that, but I feel like that might help the fastball play, the four seamer play. You mentioned, you don't have crazy ride on it, but probably that lower slot helps a little bit if you throw it up in the zone.
Sure, I think it does. There is a metric for it. It's called uh
IVB,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So induced vertical break, yeah, and then
yeah,
vertical approach angle. So
that's
how
yeah,
so like a lower slot guy that's throwing like from here but has good carry, the ball's gonna like look like it's rising versus like the same guy that's throwing from up here with the same vertical, it's on that downhill plane
yeah.
where it doesn't look like it's rising quite as much. So it's just kind of like a magic trick, I guess, or perception. So if I'm like throwing here with average carry, it's going to look like a lot higher vert than the same guy that's a little higher.
Yeah, that's it. And I think like that's part of what makes you unique, and I think part of what's making you successful is you got that going for you, and it's also pitches darting in every different direction,
Yep.
as we talked about, slider, cutter. So yeah, I don't know, man. We've been happy to watch your progress this year. As I was saying, we were sitting next to you at Charton last year, and see you now. Like, I don't know. As Rod said, he talked to Scott Harris today, and he seemed to say, yeah, I think he's a big leaguer. I don't know if that means this year.
Sweet.
That'd be kind of cool, right? But
No,
yeah,
I am. I want to get up there and help, the Tigers win, and I mean it's a dream of mine for sure.
yeah. Well, I'd like to say congrats on all your success so far this year, and hopefully, for your sake and for the team's sake, continue at the higher level too. And we'll be seeing you down at Detroit before too long.
Sweet.
And thanks for taking the time to talk to us, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sawyer.
All right, let me end this here.